What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another edition of the Sheehan Show here on Sherdog.com. And today I am joined by Myles Price for his big fight with Jeremy Stephens this weekend over at PFL. For Myles, thank you very much for joining me today. How are you?
Hey, Sean, all is good. Thanks very much. Thanks for having me on.
No bother at all. Not a bother at all. First things first, I kind of want to ask you. We haven't had that many people, I suppose, on on the PFL from this side of the world. I just want to know what it was like for you. Being in a different promotion, being in kind of a new promotion for people on this side of the world and competing there. How did they treat you, and just how did it go? First of all, after one fight.
I really thought that the treatment was fantastic, to be honest with you. Everything was ran on schedule. It was we were looked after like brilliantly in regards to, we had like kind of our own concierge that told us when everything was on and got anything that we needed at any given time. Testing was brilliant. But basically it was just ran really well. I felt like I was just looked after as a fighter, and I feel like everything was just super well organized, to be honest. So for me, it was a treat. Yeah, it was a really great experience.
I know that the PFL have been they've been looking for people, and I was even talking to a couple of people for the PFL before you were signing and before they were looking at a few others, and I know they've moved in with the UK now and other places as well. Is it important for you to be kind of one of the people from this side of the world kind of representing as well? Because I know, you spoke to us before in one of our streams over in Severe, Maine, said, you wanted to sign for PFL, you wanted to go there. Was it important for you to be one of the first people there?
I suppose it's an added kind of extra. Yeah, like you would, to be the first Irishman on a big promotion like that is it means a lot for sure. But I wouldn't say it's like an overly big deal or anything like that. It's just an honor to fight on any sort of a big promotion, really, and represent myself and my team and country and county. So yeah, I mean, it's great. Like, I forget sometimes that I am the first guy to get into PFL, and hopefully that opens its doors to many other Irish athletes now as well.
100%. I think it'll be absolutely great. Reflect on that first fight against Anthony Pettis. I know you put up a post afterwards about kind of the mental side of the game. Was that a big part of it? Because going into the fight, I was analysing and everyone else was analysing. After looking at your great win over Peter Queally and the fantastic wrestling you had in that fight, the obvious thing against Anthony Pettis, go in and wrestle him, and you did that at the very start, and it kind of obviously worked against you. Reflecting on that, was it the 3 years out of the cage? Was it just being too anxious maybe to get the fight to the ground? What was it for you, reflecting on it?
I think you hit the nail on the head, to be honest with you, Sean. I think it was a bit of a merge of the two, to be honest with you. I think it was the time off and the anxiety. I was just basically gun shy. It wasn't like, it didn't feel like me in there, to be honest. And that's no excuses. I don't like throwing out excuses. Everybody has something that they bring into a fight, be it an injury or it's something they're going through in their personal life. But for me, I felt like on reflection afterwards that as much as I prepared mentally and physically for it, this time it was a little bit too much time in between. And it was just one of those things, when your nervous system hasn't been in a stressful situation like that in a long time, it's going to fight, flight, or freeze, and you can't flight because you're locked into a cage. So there are certain moments where I froze and I rushed certain things. And my style of athlete, of athletic approach is calm, cool, collected, feel things out. But with calculated pressure, and it just didn't, it was too forced. So I froze and forced things. And there was some circumstances there were some moments in the fight when I looked back and broke it down with my sports psychologist and took my notes, that I was just not really reacting the way I usually would. So I feel like that it had more of an effect on me than what I perceived heading in there the time off. So I think you hit the nail on the head with that, to be honest with you, yeah.
In the actual fight itself, when you went for that takedown, I noticed you kind of like the head hit the ground a little bit. Did that hurt? Obviously it hurt. You hit your fucking head off the ground. But it was one of those things that kind of stunned you, and in the second you pop back up, he's hitting you with a big uppercut? Or was it a thing that you didn't even really notice at the time?
I didn't really notice. No, I went for. I would have liked to have stood and used my striking a bit more against my last opponent, because I came from a striking background. Like, I know I improved my wrestling a lot, and I've done stages throughout my career of I've done a lot of jiu-jitsu, and then I focused on or started with the striking, then jiu-jitsu, then it morphed into kind of the wrestling. But I felt like that it was, when I went for that shot, it felt like that my entry was not really set up. But if you look at the moment where I went for the shot, as he stepped back, I kind of lost my balance and I fell to my right, and then he kind of uppercutted me as I was, and true, I think he threw 5 or 6 shots as I was trying to get my balance. So, bit of a whoopsie at the start, all right.
It must be so hard, because like you're stuck between a rock and a hard place, really, because, you know, as you said, you are a very good striker. Maybe people forget that because of the Queally fight, but you know, when you're fighting Anthony Pettis, you could be as good a striker as you want sometimes, I suppose, but if you have the good wrestling, you might as well use that. But then you're stuck between that. You're like,
that's it.
Should I go in there and should I wrestle Anthony Pettis from second one, or should I go in there and strike with him, set it up a bit? If, like, let's say you went in there and you struck with him and you ended up, you know, getting hurt or whatever, finish like that, people will be saying, why didn't he go for the takedown from second one? So that must be a tough decision to make, even preparing for the fight.
Exactly. We're stuck between a rock and a hard place, I suppose. But still, I think that freeze moment came when I rushed the takedown. Like, it's one thing implementing your wrestling, but it's another thing kind of desperately banking on it. And that's the kind of moment where I didn't compose myself and set it up with a little bit more efficiency, you know. So, yeah. That's the fight game. It happens, you know. Somebody has to win, somebody has to lose. Yeah. It's up to you to learn from it, and that's it, you know.
And how long did it take you, I suppose, to decompress after that, or just or whatever the word might be, you know, take away what you need to take from the mental side of it, as well as the, you know, the physical side, as well as the technical side of it after the fight? I know you, as I mentioned, you put up that post, but was it one of those things, like, it's the biggest fight of your life against Anthony Pettis, you know, this big former UFC champion? Was it a thing that took a long time, or did you kind of, you know, sort it out in your head pretty quickly?
It took me probably about a week. Like, when I put that post up on social media, I think it was about a week after. I took that time, like, to really reflect. Like, obviously, I only contacted people who were very close in my circle, and I stayed off social media. Just didn't really message anyone back. But that was kind of the moment where I sent out like a general post, just to kind of give my general reflection, and to say thanks as well for anybody that supported me, and any fans or people that just had interest in the fight, just to message them all back individually, because I am like that. Like, you know, if I get a message off someone, I do take the time to message them back, even just to say thanks, like, you know. But I needed time to reflect on it. So about a week, about a week. It's a hard pill to swallow, like, but at the end of the day, like, you know, no guts, no glory. Like, you know, I'm in there putting my best performance in, regardless. Like, that was my best performance on that night. I know I'm better than that skill-wise, 100%. There's factors that came into it that I discussed with you there that definitely felt like influenced the fight, but I still stepped in, you know, like 3.5 year layoff against a former UFC world champion. I mean, you know, there was times there where I thought I wasn't going to fight again in that 3.5 year layoff. I wasn't living like the martial arts lifestyle really, or anything like that. Like, you know, I was kind of in and out with training. So, you know, I have to give myself a pat on the back as well, you know, to step in there at that type of fight after 3.5 years. I mean, what a learning experience. Like, you know, like, that's me shaking off the rust a lot. Like, you know, it's like, just to be in there with those circumstances at play. Since then, I've just felt really great in training. I just feel like really relaxed and kind of just feel like that it's lovely. What a great experience. It just felt really good. It took me about a week, but after the week I was grand. Like, yeah.
I want to get to what's next, and obviously, you know, you had a 3.5 year turnaround. You've almost a 3.5 week turnaround this time. We'll get to that in a second. But in the 3.5 years you were off, you know, you spoke about maybe not coming back there, and I know you had the gym and you're working and doing everything, and obviously we had the pandemic as well, but you were supposed to fight Alfie Davis, obviously, in Bellator, and that didn't happen, and then, you know, yourself and Bellator went your separate ways, and obviously you ended up then in PFL. But was it the case? I remember, like, you beat Peter Queally, and that was a fight that Peter Queally was supposed to win, if we want to put it that way, for Bellator. Yeah. You know, Bellator are pushing, and they've done a great job, you know, pushing Peter Queally, and they got him into a title fight, and he's done a great job himself as well, don't get me wrong. But did you feel like it was a case of Bellator didn't want you there, or they were, what was it? And what were the other things that kind of stopped you from fighting in those 3.5 years?
Well, you know, one, because of just a change of identity in a lot of ways, to be honest with you, Sean, especially throughout the pandemic, you know, like I felt like that I was just really falling into the coaching role a lot and falling into my future aspirations with academics. You know, I want to go back to college. So, you know, there's this kind of tie. But also, it's a huge part of who I am, you know, like I'm not able to move on to other chapters in my life as being a coach or into academics if I don't kind of put that to bed to a degree. Like, regardless of results, I have to give it 100% and know that I faced myself and I took risks, you know. So that kind of happened there with what was else with Bellator? Well, the difference with Bellator and PFL is, in a similar kind of way, you know, like, you know, PFL knew that I was coming off a 3.5 year layoff. They want to push the poster boy Anthony Pettis, but, you know, that's one narrative. But the other narrative is they're giving me a great opportunity. Do you know what I mean? So although I knew that with Bellator was kind of the case as well, where they're bringing me in, it's a good enough matchup where it's going to be challenging for Peter. But also they think that Peter's going to win, you know what I mean? And they want to push Peter. And that's fine. Like, that's their business model. But Bellator didn't really follow up after that, like, even though I earned a good fight after that. Like, look at the fight that they're giving me now with PFL again. Like, you know, they're giving me Jeremy Stevens. They're giving me another big fight. And that's coming off a loss. Do you know what I mean? So I think that's kind of where the difference is a little bit. And I don't have any real resentment, you could say, against any promotion that tries to push a certain fighter, because that's their business model. Like, you know, like, they're not going to be forgiven with that. That's just the way it is, like, you know. But there's, I think that there's differences though as well, you know. Yeah.
Was there any injuries in that time off as well, or was it all kind of what you mentioned there, you know, not being able to get fights and then obviously going with the PFL and waiting for them, or was there any injury problems as well?
There was a couple of niggly injuries here and there. Nothing crazy, really. Like, it was more kind of just living life, really, to be honest with you, Sean, you know, and the time off, like, you know, and as I was saying to you, just contemplating probably not fighting again and then moving down a different road. But, you know, the itch came back. So, yeah. How hard
is it, I suppose, to switch from being a trainer, and even, you know, I know you work with upcoming pros, but, you know, younger people probably as well, and training the basics and teaching them things like that, to move from that to being like a killer going in there fighting Anthony Pettis at the very top level? Was there an adjustment there? And I know you speak a lot about the mental side of it as well. Was there an adjustment mentally that you had to get in camp? You know, I know you train above with Team Rhino as well. Was that a sort of thing that you had to do before you came back?
I'm kind of the type that just tends to jump into deep ends sometimes, and that's not exactly a good thing either. It's something I have to be aware of, you know, like. So I did do a little bit of pre kind of fight preparation, but it was a little bit, I would have liked a little bit more time. Jumped in a little bit too, like, you know what I mean? So that's why even when the fight got pushed forward with Pettis, I was delighted, because it just gave me that little bit more time to kind of adjust and figure things out, like, you know. But now it feels like I'm just back to where I was from years ago, you know what I mean? Because I've done so much, like, this league format just keeps you so switched on and active all the time, you know. So it's just ready to really get in, have fun, and perform, like, yeah.
I know you went over to Germany as well to train. What was that like? And have you been able to get back there before this fight, or was it too short of a notice, I suppose, between fights?
It was a bit too short of a notice, and, you know, I really do like training over there in UFD. They're a great gym, great bunch of guys, really supportive and just nice guys as well, like, you know what I mean? Like, just a great team. Well, do you know, there's no place like home, really, like, you know, like, I mean, you could have, like, I could literally do my whole camp like just sparring James Sheehan. And I know that I'd get like great work out of it, like, you know, and I'm going to be like the best version of myself with that type of training partner. He's a beast, like. But the only reason why I went away was to save my body from the the constant traveling, especially at the start of camp, because your body isn't used to the hard training anymore, especially with the time off I had. So the traveling would have had a big effect on kind of, you know, my back, my hips, all that stuff. You know, as you're getting older, these little niggles start to play a factor. And I suppose shedding away responsibility, because as you said, I find it difficult to make that separation of coach and athlete, because, you know, you go from being selfless to selfish, you know, so you have to be a little bit more selfish as the athlete. And, you know, I find it hard to switch that off. I have to delegate it and then kind of exit for a little while, like, you know, like going to Germany and just zoning in. But when you come back, it's engraved into who you are. Do you know what I mean? A little bit more. So it's not as much of a deal. And my body's able to cope with the traveling a bit more now as well, which is great. Like, it means I can get up to the guys. I can travel to different gyms if I'd like. I train in a couple of different gyms as well. So if you're in say, Team Rhino and you're training there for a week, are you traveling up from Kilkenny and down every day? Is that the way it works? Yeah, I travel up. I'd have my set hard sparring days, like, you know what I mean? Like Saturdays and Mondays are my 2 hard sparring days, like, you know, so I travel up to them, yeah. And while I'm up there, I'll go to my sports psychologist and I'll, you know, probably find another gym or something and train, and then I'll come back. That must be a tough slog. Like, I know, I think I've only done it once, probably driving up from Kilkenny up to Dublin, but, you know, it's a tough slog going up and down there all the time. And you know, you say in your body and everything as well, but like, I know there's lots of, I've actually talked about it recently, and there's lots of different fighters from different parts of Ireland now obviously you're in PFL, but in Bellator and other places as well, and a lot of the training is centralised in Dublin. Is that a thing you're kind of looking at as well yourself, opening up your own gym, that maybe you can have, you know, a central hub there? You know, we know Brian Moore is over in Wexford, and there's like great gyms obviously down in Cork and up the north as well. Is that something you kind of want to provide in the future as well? I do, yeah, because everything is really, as you said, like, you put it really great there. Like, I mean, you hit it on the head. Like, everything's in Dublin, you know, you have to travel to Dublin, like, you know. And do you know what? I'd like to think that I'd have the aspirations, because I have a lot of great talent in my gym. I really do, like, you know what I mean? But, you know, it takes a coach that's really there 99.9% of the time and really fully committed to kind of to get that talent and mold it into something, you know, because talent walks in and out of the door all the time. You know, it's the hard work and consistency that matters. So I'm looking forward to really dedicating myself 100% as a coach, along with some other things on the go, as everybody's life is like, and just really kind of focus on making it a hub down in Kilkenny, because we have the experience. We have the coaching staff. You have an amazing coaching staff there in Team Rhino Kilkenny, and we have the athletes and the talent and the young people that come in are very eager. You know, it's just I'm the head honcho, so I bring a certain energy, I bring a certain expectation, and that can only really come into full fruition. Like, there's a lot of athletes that are doing very well in Team Rhino Kilkenny at the moment, but, you know, in order to make it the hub that you're talking about, it does require my energy being 100% there, not between fighting and coaching, you know. And even like when your time is off, sorry, Sean, when your time, even though I take a long time, I have taken lots of long times off in between fights. If you're not actually finished in your mind, you're still not able to 100% commit, like, you know, so. It's funny as well you mentioned the athletes. It's actually something I've talked about before, and it's very interesting to say. Over in New Zealand is the example I always take. There's lots of rugby players there who, you know, they finish up rugby and it's a great base to go into fighting MMA. We even saw with Cathal Pendred here in Ireland. But if people don't know, maybe if people listen to this in America, Kilkenny is a massive athletic hub, like, for hurling, the best, or apart from Limerick now, obviously, but the best hurling county in Ireland. You know, that's true, though. For the well, at the moment, but for the last
20 years, but going on back, 100 years of tradition. And if, even if someone doesn't make it, say, to the senior panel or whatever, they're a very good athlete. They've tried very hard. If they were to move to MMA, that athletic base is there, and it could be absolutely massive. So that's definitely a wise thing on your part. Maybe if you could get some of those people in, it'd be absolutely brilliant. But to maybe that's a chat for another day. We could probably talk about that for an hour. But to move on to the next fight, you had the mental, I suppose, aspect of making it 3.5 years and getting back to a fight. Now you have only, I'm just looking at here, sorry, it's around 5 weeks, is it, between those two fights? And obviously you said you took that week kind of to decompartmentalize after the last fight. So it's basically only a month between Anthony Pettis and Jeremy Stephens. For you, how is the preparation? I mean, how has it been tough, obviously, or what? Just a few days out now, a week out from that fight. What's the preparation been like for that one, and how have you found it mentally as well?
Mentally, it feels like it's been a long time between the last fight and this fight, to be honest with you. Because it's a strange feeling, Sean. I've only really done it once between my fight with Phil Rayburn, the Welsh fella, and Norman Park, where there's like a maintenance of your peak. That's basically all it is, and your weight, it's a bit of a slog with the weight, because you want to eat and not feel guilty about eating, even though you get away with that a little bit more because I'm only after cutting weight 4 or 6 weeks ago. But I think the only difference is, for me, is that you're not building towards a peak, you're managing a peak. So that's basically just the way it's been since the fight. I feel like I've been ready to fight for the last 6 weeks and trying to reining back the horse a little bit and not to burn out and just pull it back. And it's a lot more recovery days and a lot more little tweaks and stuff like that. I'm not training twice a day, killing myself. It's I might do 3 hard sessions a week, and the rest is foam rolling or recovery clinics and pools and yoga and light runs. And do you know what I mean? It's maintenance work and picking your hard sessions. All the hard work's done for months ago.
That'll suit some people, and some people it won't suit. We see guys even say on The Ultimate Fighter, they have a couple of weeks between fights, and say someone like Artem, who did The Ultimate Fighter, and knocked 3 lads out in a row, and then some other people go to The Ultimate Fighter, it wouldn't suit them, and then they go into another, the UFC or whatever it might be, and have a great career. For you, what way do you think it's gonna go for you? Will it suit you? And the fact that you were so long out between the last fight and this fight, that you probably don't need that big long camping because you've had such a preparation for the last fight. Yeah. So I'll be honest with you, I kind of enjoy it, to be honest with you. It forced me as well to not dwell too much on on my last fight. You kind of have to develop a very resilient mind, and you just kind of learn to mourn the loss a lot faster. Because, of course, it was disappointing. I had an opportunity to beat Anthony Pettis. He's a former UFC world champion. But the fact of the matter is that, I got pat myself in the back for going in there. I got to objectively look at it and just go, right, okay, I've lost. It's done now. What can I do? What can I do differently for next time? You know what I mean? And just move on. It's that resilience is built very fast from these short fights in a row, and you're getting a lot of your work in for fights in a league format, so it's in a season format, and it's kind of done for the year. Then I'm kind of happier, to be honest with you, to have set fights in place where I'm not right, that's a fight done now, let's take another 2 years off. I'd rather just have the fights there. At least they're there, you know what I mean? I know that they're there. And that fight is Jeremy Stephens as well, so it's out of the frying pan into the fire here in the PFL. It's no easy matchmaking, but also great matchmaking in terms of you have a massive opportunity again to take on someone like Jeremy Stephens. From your point of view, how do you think you match up watching? Obviously, Jeremy Stephens had one of the fights of the year against Clay Collard there only a few weeks ago, which might be the greatest thing for him coming back in after taking that amount of damage. But how do you think you line up against Jeremy Stephens?
I think I'm a tricky matchup. I think when it comes to the night is when it's going to really shine through. I feel like that. I feel like I was a bad matchup for Pettis as well. but it didn't work out. So it comes to, at the end of the day, I'm a bad matchup for anybody if I'm on form. And I really feel like I'm peaking to be on form mentally and physically. Like the rust has been shaken off now. I'm just ready to go in here and give Jeremy a bit of a hard time. I feel like that I've always fared out pretty well against guys who tense up or a little bit emotional, like to swing and get wild. Because when I'm on form, the calm, cool, collected Myles that can pick guys off and implement a good solid game plan and have good rational decision making while in heated exchanges, I feel like he can fade in the later rounds, and I feel like that if he doesn't get off those heavy shots, like he plants his feet and he throws very hard. And I think that he's actually a lot better fighter than what he gives off when he fights, because he lets his emotions, I think, get the better of him. And he likes the idea that he's going to knock someone out. So he banks on that. So I'm hoping to use that against him. That's what I'm going to do in the fight. And I feel like that if the stars align on the night and the butterflies are flying in the right formation, then I'm a terrible matchup for him. Yeah.
When you look at him as well, like you look at his last two fights, obviously he went in there with Clay Collard, it was a great fight, but he lost that fight, standing up, and we've seen Clay boxing a lot. And then, was it his fight previous or maybe one for Matthias Gamrot anyway, took him down almost immediately and submitted him. When you're looking at that, like which side of the road, I suppose, do you fall on when you're planning to fight him?
I'm not really going in here with the same kind of mindset like I did with the Pettis fight, because I feel like that was kind of one of the things that I could have done a bit differently, is not bank so hard on a game plan. It's like I have a general awareness of the things he does well, the things I do well, the things I'd like to implement against him that work around his weaknesses. But you don't know it's chaotic as fuck. Sorry, excuse my French. He's so chaotic MMA, isn't it? It's like, it's mad.
Madness, yeah.
So I'm just going to go in, have a general kind of game plan that I'm going to stick with, and then adapt to whatever comes my way, because I feel like going by those last two fights, like I'm the looser, rangier, more precise striker, and I'm able to take him down and submit him too. So I think it could go either way. But he has great striking too, and he has great wrestling too. He's a UFC vet. He has lots and lots of fights. So it just comes down to who implements their game plan and who brings the correct energy and keeps the rhythm on their side.
100%. Myles, I really appreciate the time. Thanks very much. Best of luck this weekend. I know everyone here in Ireland is looking forward to it, and it should be a fun fight. Appreciate the time.
Thanks so much for having me on, Sean. It's been great to be here. Thanks.
Lovely.